Firstly, thank you, Kelvin, for showing up today. Let's start with the introduction. How are you? How are you doing?
I'm good. It's been a warm day here in Brisbane. Now we're in the early evening and it's still 29 degrees, so I'm glad to be indoors.
Uh, by way of context, I'm in Cardiff. It is 8:30 in the morning, and it hasn't stopped raining since Christmas.
Oh,
Um,
bliss.
yeah. By way of introduction and to provide some context for this meetup, I've just written a book called Good Coach, Bad Coach, and within it, I share a framework that I first encountered through Calvin's work. If you've ever run a session and the start of that session hasn't really gone to plan, then you'll know why I was interested in this framework. Each week we coach kids, we coach athletes, and it's the same group of people that we coach. And it's tempting to think that if we just drop a killer drill or game into a session that looks good on Instagram, then everything will be okay. Of course, it's not. Training looks nothing like it does on Instagram. The kids are confused and you feel a little frustrated. So we look for better drills and we drop new content. And in the hope of better, we become drill droppers. It's not the drills that need to get better, it's our connection with the people that we're coaching. And it took a framework from Calvin for me to see that clearly and to clearly create that content that I put into the book. Kelvin's idea is simple. It's to change the angle of attack. To think about instead of starting with something that the kids can't do or the athlete can't do and starting with a deficit, you start with what they can do. And you build on solid ground. You introduce a concept, then you introduce a challenge, and you return to something that they can do. So it's the can framework. And it's about don't tell me what you can't do, show me what you can do. Now, it's the same in writing. When I started writing, I was very tempted to tell everyone what I was thinking, but actually it's to be able to a good writer shows people. And they do that by um, considering and meeting people where they are. And that changes how you write, it changes how you design sessions, and it changes how you show up as a coach. Now, you might be thinking, well, I haven't got time for this. I've got 20 kids showing up. I've got to put the cones down and I've got a session to deliver. But actually, you're already doing it. You're already in front of the people that matter. The practice is already there. All you're doing is changing the direction. As I said, this framework, what Calvin has done is change the direction in which you are, the direction of attention, really. And so, just like a writer who sits down and writes, we're not asking coaches to write anymore. What a good writer does is they write to connect to their reader. So you're redirecting where you put your attention. There's nothing new. There's nothing that is additional. Um, and I don't know a better way to bring what you are, your ideas and your practice than writing a manifesto. It brings what you want to, what your practice stands for, what you're thinking about, and what you want to develop out into the world. And that's really about the whole. This is how this whole thing started for me. It was about writing a manifesto, and that manifesto was the Good Coach, Bad Coach manifesto. And it was about me putting down my marker. And the rule, of course, throughout all of this, whether it's a manifesto, whether it's a training practice, is to show, not tell, and then to find a way to bring those ideas to life. And so I can't think of a better person to bring to the table than Calvin to show us how to bring these ideas, these practical ideas to life. So I'm going to jump off and I'm going to hand over to Calvin.
Thank you, Simon. Everybody, let me share the screen and see if I can take you through this journey. So someone just mentioned can do, can do, can't do, can do, and I don't want anybody to think that this is a spell, a potion, a gadget, or a secret, or the new way of doing things. There's too much of that on going out there on the internet already. I want to come back to some basic learning processes. So don't see this can do, can't do idea as anything else but part of this incredible jigsaw of learning that you and your athletes are going to go on. As you can see from that little diagram, it's just one small part of all the things that make all this work. And unfortunately, and Simon did mention it, that we tend to be stuck with a narrow vision on doing drills or trying to win the next contest or just get ready for the weekend's competition, rather than see this as a long-term journey of arriving at a destination of whether that's physical well-being and happiness, or whether it's going to be into high performance. So what I'd like to do is to make sure we look at all the other parts of this jigsaw to try and go through this, because this is what happens. Once this journey starts, this picture is going to change and the pieces keep on changing. Why? Because this young person is growing and changing every day. And we think we've coached it this week, but did they learn it? Is it something that has now stuck to their bones? Can they repeat this now successfully? Because very often we do programs that we tick a box that we've done that and then we try and move on. Whereas the young person in front of you has got to earn the right by adapting and learning to actually move forward. And before sort of getting a bit too close to this can do, can't do, what I'd like to do is make sure that these other parts of the jigsaw have been mentioned today. So we can all try and go and make sure that everything I mentioned, and I can't mention them all, is something that you've got to go and make sure that you're doing, that's in your toolbox. So I'm going to assume a few things today. That you're creating a journey towards physical and emotional well-being for this young person in front of you. These are the foundations of life, not just the foundations of the sport or the game-specific activities. And their physical development is their mechanical and their metabolic development. The things that they're going to need for the rest of their lives to lead a healthy life. That's the beginnings of all this. Whether you're going to the Olympic final or not, these are the beginnings that we've all got to consider. The other thing I'm assuming that every one of you out there coaching understands that they're going through maturation, they're going through changes, and all the parents out there now will know that they watch their children change. So we need to understand, where are they on this maturation journey? What rate is it happening at? Is it quick? Are they an early developer, a late developer? And how long have they been doing this activity? Are they fresh in today or this week, or have they been involved and have a training age of several years? Now, if I understand this, and the first thing I mentioned, I've got a better chance of making a decent decision. And I'm assuming that as you present these activities to them, you're going to make sure they're efficient at doing them. And then as they get more efficient, they'll get consistency. And as they get more consistency, then it'll be a resilient practice. In other words, it can survive things like fatigue and pressure and competition if you are in a sports situation. So I want to make sure that everything I'm doing is that I can tick the box. I'm chasing efficiency, consistency, and/or resilience. And I'm also doing it inside another framework. I'm going to make sure that I don't really have to get everything geared towards winning next Saturday's game. I can give them a general, all-round physical development to make them physically efficient, to make them physically sound. And the health and well-being of all young people is vital nowadays. So I want a general background to start with. I want to dig nice, deep foundations of general movement vocabularies. And then if we have to relate it to a sport or get specific to a sport, we've got something to build it on. So I'm assuming that you've got that in your toolbox as well. I'm also assuming that you understand the keystones of this physical journey, or the behavioral journey they're on, or the technical journey they're on, or the tactical journey. You understand the building blocks of that, the things that you've got to put in place upon which to build the next things, deep, deep foundations. These keystones are those foundation movements or actions or postures or cues or rules or principles upon which these four vital journeys, these four pillars of their performance and their life, physical, behavioral, technical, and tactical, that they will be built upon. And once we understand all those, you've got a much better chance of making the right decision today. Now, these keystones, I might have arrived at a point where I believe these are the keystones I look at for this activity. You may have a different idea on that. There's never one way of doing anything. So your keystones and the way you go about it could be completely different to mine. And as long as they're born of your growth and your experience, then you own them. They're the things that will get you moving forward because you believe in them and you've learned them yourself. They could be completely different to mine. This is quite an important one. So let me go through some examples of what I mean by keystones. And you might think some of these are crazy, but that is mine. I'll choose a keystone from when I'm coaching running activities. And I've always looked at the keystone of running as being how and when and where the foot hits the floor, and then where it goes when it comes off the floor into the next cycle of the gait cycle. I believe that is the glue that puts it all together. I want to get everybody, I want them to be able to do the same thing every single time, and these are the keys I look at. And in my language, therefore, this general overview of the keystone is this. I want to see toes up, heel to hamstring, stepping over the opposite knee, and their bodies in a shallow C shape. That's my interpretation of the running cycle. And I've come up with these words, and you might think they're pretty daft. But it's toes up, heel to hamstring, step over the knee, and a C shape. And some of the coaches that I've worked with over the years, it was only last week, a coach from 25 years ago came back and said, hey, I still call it tutu socks. It was just the way that they had learned. And now that they've modified it slightly, but they built it from there and they called it tutu socks. And
Brilliant.
I had to laugh, but it was fascinating to realize that they've actually looked at the keystones of this running action. You know, far too often we're always teaching kids how far to run and how fast to run, and we forgot to teach them how to run. So that's the beginnings of the keystones that I have always used, and I've arrived at here after 50 odd years of doing this, what I can call the keystone to running activities. I do help with swimmers, and I use the backstroke swimming. I've got long neck, early elbow catch, feel the paddle. Pull and push, brush the ears. These are the ones that keep on recycling for me, that I'll always make decisions and do activities around these keystones. If I'm teaching the squat, say, which is one of the fundamental movements that link to just about everything, triple flexion and extension. I've always used this now for 40 years, and it's never missed with any athletes I've worked with. Head up, chest up, butt out, weight through the heels, back and shins parallel. I know what to look for. I'm looking for that all the time. I'm not saying they're always right, and yours might be different. In the shot and discus, I do a lot of athletics coaching. I've always worked, and everything I do, every activity, every language, the vocabulary, the activities are built around chin, knee, toe, keep the heel up and keep it turning, make a bow, see it go. So you will have your own that you will come with as the years go by, that you will discard those that didn't work as well and you'll keep them. And these have stood the test of 55 years for me of arriving here. And to me, in my daft way of doing things, they work. So these are my keystones. You get your own. Okay, sorry. So I had to stay on that one a bit. The other assumption is this: you are well equipped and well experienced to prepare the physical coaching environment you're going to turn up to tonight. That's the equipment you're going to use, the spaces you're going to set out, the transition from moving in between these spaces, that you've got that nailed down. There's nothing worse than interrupting the flow of learning because you hadn't prepared the environment well. You just got to take some time before you do that. And you'll learn as time goes on how I need to shift this ground. I need to make the area smaller or narrower, or I need a bit deeper, or I need to change where I leave this equipment. Just so we don't interfere with this wonderful journey they're on. Another assumption, you're going to know the order of things that it's going to take place. What's the best order of these things from the early learning they can do inside the warm-up? If you're still sending them on a 2-lap jog, then go and get another jog. We can learn so much in the warm-up by all these different activities and challenges that do warm them up for the session that's coming, but also give them learning opportunities. From the warm-up to the movement breaks you may put into the session, through the technical exposure and into the application into a game. Each one of those, get the order right. And that's going to help again to not interfere with the learning process. It's a tough enough one. I'm also assuming you know where to stand, where to move to, and what to look for. That's an important thing. You coach by walking about. Change the angle that you're looking at things. Be on a different side. Look forwards, look backwards, look sideways. And just start to see it from all these different points of view. It's amazing what you'll see. Observation is one of the great keys for us as coaches. And one of the real biggies in this is that you really understand the what, the when, and the how of feeding back to these young people in front of you. When they do something, sometimes you don't need to say anything. Sometimes restraint is just brilliant. Just let them get on with it for most of the time. But there's going to be a time then and you want them to give you feedback as well. So that opens up other doors to how you communicate with them, which I'll come to later on. And you've also got to know how to turn up an activity and make it more difficult, or turn it down and make it easier, whether this is in the physical, the technical, the tactical, or the behavioral stuff that you're dealing with, that you're putting into the session. There are 4 pillars of learning taking place in this session today. So if you know how to accelerate it and or back it off in case it's not working well, you need that variability to go on in every activity and drill and that you do. So as time goes by, your expertise will begin to understand all these things and understand all the things in your ever-growing toolbox and know, when can I bring this in? And that's one of the bits I want to try and deal with today, if I can, of when do we do this in the session and what do we do and when's a good time, etc. So I'm hoping that's giving you an idea of the big parts of the jigsaw. It's not just the drill you're going to choose. It's going to be all these things that I've assumed that you've got expertise at and you're learning every day about. So let's look at... Yes, go on.
Jump in there. So obviously made a lot of assumptions there about the coach and their background and where they've come from. And when you say about learning, how do you see the coach picking up that information, and where are they picking that information up from?
Well, I'll be safe to say, and it's a bold thing to say, that I don't think you'll ever pick it up from the certification course. I just don't think. We're spending too much time on all the other stuff that's going on in there, which is just chasing numbers at the end of the day. This information is out there. It's seldom going to be in universities. It's seldom going to be in colleges, and it's seldom going to be in certification courses. Where is it? I learned this from other human beings, and I was lucky. I trained as a PE teacher back in 1965 to 1968, and you won't even know these names, but the Ian Wards of this world, and the Dennis Watts of this world, and the Wilf Paces of this world were absolutely brilliant teachers, and it was their language and vocabulary that that wove itself deep into the whole structure of physical education, of education, tertiary education, into junior sporting clubs and senior sporting clubs. These guys controlled the language of where it was going, and I was lucky. I was just like a sponge. But
Mm.
I also made sure that when I started teaching, I kept visiting these people. Or I was visiting when I was an athletics coach, I was visiting people at Wolverhampton and Bilston and at Birchfield Harriers and watching them coach. The women, Nelson Neal and Jeff War, it's a different generation, I know. You won't know who they are, but I watched them every day. And then I also was sort of bold enough to get in touch with other coaches and the national coaching structure that used to be in the golden days of British athletics. And I could get in touch with a Malcolm Arnold and a Carl Johnson and a Bruce Longdon and a Frank Dick. And I could then ask them, what can I do next? Where can I go to? And then I'd meet another coach who was one of the local school guys, and we would share each other's ideas. We remember we weren't exchanging videos in them days, or all the things you can do now, but just to be able to sit and say, look, I tried this last week. Now
Mm.
I was playing semi-professional football just with the local pub side as I was going out, and I was meeting lots of soccer coaches as well at the time, and I could see what they were trying to do, and I could learn from them. So look, without going on too long, the information is out there if you're willing to go and try and find it, and it's going to come down to communication with fellow coaches and fellow teachers. It's going to be that where you swallow your pride, you show your humility, and you say, "Can you help me? Can I come and watch?" And go and watch other people work. And while you're watching other people work, you've got to be in the position to be able to say, "Why did you do that?"
Yeah,
What?
because as I'm listening to this, I'm thinking, based on they're the assumptions that need challenging, right? They're the bits where you go and you have those conversations with other people, and this is what I think I'm seeing, and this is what I think I'm doing, and it's those assumptions that you spoke about earlier that feel very much peer to peer.
Yeah, and if you use those ones I listed and I colored them in blue, like you can see them there, then you can go with a little list over the months and the years. You can go with a list of things. Well, I might just want to say, how do you manage the space here? How are you going to manage it?
Yeah,
How are you going to set up this part here? How do you know what their maturation?
yeah,
And you'll get good answers and you'll get no answers. But if you use those uh, points that I made earlier of the assumptions as a checklist,
yeah.
I'm not saying they're the only ones, but
No, of
they're the
course.
ones that always seem to come up for me with the people I'm working with. Use those as a checklist and go and start asking the questions. How do
Yes.
you do this and how do you do that? And you'll get good, bad, and indifferent answers, but you'll get some answers. And if the answer is I don't know, you have to go and ask the question from somewhere else. And if that person's in the right position, same idea as you, they'll say, "Did you ever get the answer to that?" And then you've got a
Yeah,
communication going. And now we've got a group of coaches together. Just working with each other. Don't wait for your national governing body to do it. You'll be dead before they even think about this. But to get a group of like-minded coaches together, just brainstorming together on the phone in a workshop. Go and find 6 coaches local to you. Choose one of my assumptions. Get them all in the room together with a point of beer and say, "Let's spend half an hour discussing this. What are we all doing about this?"
100%, Calvin. As I'm listening to the presentation, that's exactly what I'm thinking. I'm thinking study groups. I'm thinking about assumptions and challenging those assumptions
Yeah,
in a way
yeah.
that is based around growth, not that you're there to hang people out to dry.
No, no.
There's 6 people with the intention of learning, and that
You,
that's
you know, you know,
that's
Simon.
wonderful. That's
Yeah,
wonderful.
the bottom line of that is humility.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
If you're just humble enough to say, "I don't know, can anybody help?" And then the right people will come up and start talking to you. If
yeah.
they're, yeah, and you'll know which people to spend time with and which ones not. And it takes time. I mean, I've met millions of people, and I've got this small group Lachlan, Dean, Suki, Anthony. There's a group that I trust now to my dying day. But it started off with thousands of them, and now it's down to this small group of people that have had the same language, vocabulary, support, humility all the way through my working life, and now I'm learning from them.
Because in there you're talking about what you're paying attention to, and we talked about that at the very start of the introduction. So the cues that you use, the language that you're using, these are all up. These are all, as you said, go find your own cues, go find your own language, go find your ideas around coaching, and they will be different. Everyone will be different, and
Oh
that
yeah,
that in
yeah,
itself is part of the conversation.
it is.
So yeah, Kelvin, thank you for answering that. I just wanted to pick up on that as we went through the presentation. Thank you.
Okay. So we're at the point of saying what does the session look like? So let's jump into the session now and look at these are only generalizations, but I've tried to get the general things that have been happening regularly for decade after decade. So usually this journey, the sessions commence with an explanation and a demonstration of a relatively simple version of the activity. Running, jumping, throwing, kicking, catching, striking, squatting, lunging, pulling, pushing, bracing, rotation. I don't matter what it is. A simple version, you explain it, you demonstrate it, and then you let them go. Now, so that's a pretty simple start. Now, don't panic, because now's the time that you engage, inspire, enthuse, and you smile. You're going to walk around while they're doing this, while they're being clumsy, while it's not working, while it is working, while this is going wrong and that's going wrong. You're going to be with them. You're going to enthuse them, engage them, inspire them. You're going to smile with them. You're going to communicate with them, and you're walking past it. You're with them doing this. That's that's the biggest soft skill in coaching that I've ever come across. Is go and engage with them as a human being. Observe by walking about and encouraging perseverance. This is one of the behavioral times you can have a go. And you're going to watch them, because if you look, they'll show you how it's working. You haven't got to make the decision. You haven't got to tell them what to do. You haven't got to keep giving them instructions. Let them go and try it. You haven't got to pass any judgment on them. You look, they'll show you of how you've explained it and demonstrated it, whether you did a good job or not. It's not the time for this you haven't, just shut up. It's their puzzle to solve. You just let them go, but you're with them. You're walking around, you're tapping them on the shoulder. You might say, good, not bad, try again, have a go. No, worry about that. Your language, your vocabulary, the essence of you is now linking to them. That's engagement. Then you call them back in again after a while. You say, okay, you repeat the demonstration and the explanation. You refocus on the keystone that you've chosen for today. And you can sometimes now, because you've just observed things, you can start mentioning some things in the demonstration and the explanation of things you saw. Not things was in chapter 12 of a book, but things you saw them do, the reality of it. Don't forget, you look, they'll show you. And then you send them back out again, another period of free practice. And there you go. Time to engage, inspire, enthuse, and smile. You coach by walk about encouraging perseverance. And now your communication, you begin to start asking a few questions. You haven't got to give them another instruction. You've just done that twice. Start to communicate by asking more questions and giving more instructions. Call them back in. I will expand on that in a second. Then you can call them back in again. After a period of time that you've watched them, and there's a few things going well now, a few things still not going well, it's still there. They're trying it. You're asking for perseverance. You're with them. If it's not going well, you boost their self-esteem. If it's going well, all the wonderful things you can do as a human being. So now we repeat the explanation and the demonstration, but this time From our toolbox, we can bring in things like using analogies or external focus or outcome elements or partner observation. In other words, right, get with your partner over there. He's going to be the coach. You're going to do it. You're going to do it 8 times now, and he's going to have a look at it, and he'll tell you what he's seeing, whether it's right or. So when they're coaching, they're observing, and then they swap over. So you've got that little tool in your toolbox. So different ways now using analysis, external focus. Look, we haven't got the time today to dig deep into these things. We could do that another time. But we're going to highlight these keystones in a slightly different way this third time we fetched them back in. Now we've got another chance of free practice. There it is again. We're going to engage, inspire, enthuse, and smile. This is an easy session. You'll need some good sleep after this. You're not standing there and blowing a bloody whistle. You coast by walking about. You observe. You start asking questions related to whatever you use in your demonstration, analogies you or external focus, whatever you've chosen. You're beginning to build that in now as you're walking about. So let me sort of give you an example of that. This is you talking. You're nearly there. Now, can you find out what happens if you slow this down? You want to give them the chance that it's a question. Oh, well, all right. Well, just go on, have a go. Or show us what would happen if you make it go too fast. It's a question. You're not instructing them. You're just challenging them to come up with an answer. What might happen is you stood a little closer. Now, I know I've done that one with golfers when you're trying to teach them to putt. Sticking them 12, 15 feet from the flag, what do you expect? Let's get them close. I always start my golf work with the youngsters by trying to sink the putt from 6 inches. And then we just go further away. So what might happen so you pose a question and they go, oh, I'll try that. And they've tried it. It's their answer. Now, is it best with your chin higher or lower? I've done that one with backstrokers. Cross the bar like a frog. Well, you won't even know what that means, but I can tell you that when I coached the Australian record holder in high jump, she stood 1.70 meters tall, and she jumped 1.98 meters. She jumped 28 centimeters over her own height. She's not like the giants walking around now. She was a tiny tot. She couldn't make mistakes. And we had one problem, and I tried for weeks and weeks to try and overcome it. We'd worked on the floor, we did things. And one day I just said, to get the knees apart, to get the right knee driving earlier, I said, cross it like a frog. And that picture went, dying, an analogy. And she crossed the bar like a frog, and it changed the whole mechanics all the way down back to the curve. Just by I found one word, one little phrase, cross the bar like a frog. Or my granddaughter doing discus, throw it over those trees. I wanted her to raise the delivery a bit. Well, I want to tell her how to put the hand in the shoulder. See the trees, throw it over that. Again, I'm asking questions. Shot and discus. Next time, see if you can keep your heel off the ground. It's these kind of things. Finish with your fingers pointing at the target, which is an outcome based. So these become questions and not instructions. They're part of this language and this relationship you're building up with them. The relationship is far better when you're asking questions and you're communicating than you are blasting out a set of instructions all the time. Oh, that was good, that was wrong. No, we don't need to do that. These are the soft skills you've got to work on. The process goes all these things that I've just done, from the assumptions to this is the process of how a session might be put together, and you've got your own to put together, fetching them in and sending them out and fetching them in, and how you instruct them. All this is while you're doing it, you're going to answer some questions. After 10 minutes of doing all this, you're going to say, is this working? Reflective practice. Is this work? Don't wait until next week to see if it's working. Is this working? Are they all engaged? Am I looking for that? Yeah, all right. Did anybody look completely lost? Have a look, find them. Or is anybody advancing rapidly and you don't want them to get bored? These 4 questions are always running through your mind all the time during the session. It means you're engaged. You're not engaged in the drill. You're engaged with that human being, that group of human beings in front of you. And they're seeing parts of you. If you smile, if you ask a question, and if you're actually making sure that they're all engaged. So this again, I've jumped to the side here. This is the kind of thing that is a checklist for the coach during the session. There's no time limit to how long this takes. I'm not saying if this is a one session phase, a cycle, a year, a decade, 3 decades. I don't know how long this is going to take. I don't know how many of these cycles you're going to have to do. It's not up to you. It's up to them. They'll adapt at the rate that they're going to adapt at. They're not going to adapt because you've got a timetable or you've got a calendar you've got to work to, because there's a fixture list coming up. The fixture list is the worst thing you want to worry about. Use the fixtures as part of this if you can, but that's a different matter altogether. I don't know how
And
long
that's
this will take.
through. I'm sorry,
Sorry.
Kevin. That's coming through on from the very start all the way through. This is the connection with the people that you're coaching,
Yeah,
rather than the content of the drill that is just
yeah,
that is there to impress. The
yeah.
connection with the athlete and how you show up as a coach.
Oh yeah, but I'll go back to that 1965 to 68 when I met all that crew I mentioned, all the coaches. They were good enough to behave like that towards me. This
Yeah.
snotty-nosed 21-year-old that wanted to be a national coach for Great Britain. And that was my aim. And I sucked them dry, and they were willing to give me the time. And I'm indebted to them. But that was a natural thing to them, to have these qualities as a human being, to put communication first, the relationship first. It's better than we're doing at the moment. So I agree with you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, yeah, each journey you're going to see happening in front of you, you've got 30 kids in front of you, you're going to see 30 different varieties of what's going on. You're going to have, it's going to be an avalanche of information coming back to you. And what you can't panic with it. You've got to try and see through it and see if this generally is, you work on generalities to start with. They're not going to win this straight away. You might see things that are right, you might see things that are wrong, and you're going to see a lot of things that are just different. And as time goes by, you'll begin to work out what is right, what is going to be mended, and what can be left alone because that's their unique way of doing it. And I don't have any statistics to give you on that. I've just had to learn it and learn it and learn it. You don't have to change everything. Sometimes it's their interpretation based on their structure, their physiology, their systems. That's the way they're going to come up with it. And people have broken world records like this. So you haven't got to keep on narrowing this down to one way of doing it. But certainly as time goes by, you'll learn what is right and what is wrong, rather than and be ready for that what's different.
And when you talk about that, Kelvin, right and wrong, that sounds absolute, doesn't it? But
Yeah.
as you say, each individual's got a different way of approaching the same problem.
Yeah, well, because they're so unique, neuromuscularly, endocrine, musculoskeletal, they're completely unique. What you think is that there's no such thing as the perfect technique on anything.
Mm.
There's the one that is optimal for them. The
Mm.
length of levers determines so many things in a triple flexion extension movement. You've got all these variables. Let the variables take over. Understanding what is right and wrong, if you're working on the keystone is either occurring or it's not occurring. There is a finite thing in there. Now, so if you're working on a discus throw and you want it to be able to pivot, land in the middle of a circle, and a heel stays up so they can pivot on one leg, and you're doing that in lots of variables over here. You're doing it on grass, you're doing it on concrete, you're doing it slowly, you're doing triples and double situations, you're running and jumping and twisting in there and landing. You've got all these other things coming in, and it's all aiming at this one keystone. Now, if their heel keeps hitting on the floor, it's wrong. If their heel is a little bit higher than somebody else's, or it sticks at they're on their way to getting somewhere. So there are some finite things in this that have to go on. If you're kicking a football and the non-kicking foot is 5 feet from where the ball is, well, that ain't right. But whether it's 2 inches, 3 inches, or 5 inches doesn't matter. It's based on their own rhythms. So you've got to start differentiating between what is right, what is wrong, and the keystone tells you. If you go back to one of the early assumptions, if you understand the keystones of the things that simply must take place inside this technique that you want, this movement pattern that you're after, well, there's your answers. If they're miles away from it, you got to keep fetching them back to it. So there is a right and a wrong, but the interpretation, the more we do this finite research at levels which are beyond what your eyes can see, and you get tied down to little tiny details and you worry about those, whereas the bigger picture is working for you, that's very often a good way of using your observation on these things.
I love the examples there of putting them on different surfaces, giving them different, faster, slower.
Oh yeah, yeah. I've got a whole list of those coming up.
Yeah, yeah.
So when the keystones start to appear more frequently and more consistently, and it's never going to be considered all the time. Now we've got a chance now of using this, what we call variability. We're getting a little bit closer now to the can do, can't do situation. I'm sorry it's taken this long to get there, but so
Kelvin, I've known you long enough to know.
So we're going to let me just try and describe what I mean by variability in my clumsy way. You're going to add little wrinkles and little interferences to this keystone. You're going to poke the bear a little bit and just to see if, all right, you look good on your, now I'm going to see if it is going to hang in there a little bit more. I'm going to find little ways of just interfering with this a little bit to see how good you are. It's a fun situation. It's not there to make them fail. I've also described it in the past as adding a layer of neural fog. In other words, every time we move, every time I'm moving now, I'm moving my head, vision's changing, I'm getting this huge amount of information pouring back into my brain to send the information back out again to do what I'm trying to do. The neuromuscular system is burning with all sorts of things. Somewhere in that fog of movement is my keystone I'm after. So that might be a way of looking at it. If I can add something to this learning now that makes them look closer and seek out even more harder to try and get to this keystone, is another way of trying to describe it. Another way I've used before, did this with Bill Knowles over a cup of coffee at my sister's house once. I wanted to peer through a blizzard of additional neuromuscular activity to find the keystone. I'm gonna make this. We were trying to get somebody on one leg from an ACL reconstruction. We were leaping from one side to the other, of absorbing and leaving and absorbing and leaving and landing and doing that. Then we started to do the same thing. Now start juggling this ball. Wow.
Brilliant. Brilliant.
Suddenly, this neural blizzard, they didn't know where they were. And keep going, keep trying. And as time, then they saw they could seek through it. They got the landing, the lateral landing and absorption going on. They found that, and they were juggling at the same time. And then we made them have one. We made them juggle with a rugby ball and a ping pong ball, and that made it even another neural blizzard. They had to find the keystone through. Hey, huge fun. I mean, incredible fun, but there's the learning part. This is a varied what's gone on. I'm going to try and appropriately, and that's an important word, to challenge the keystones, actions, postures, and things like that. I just want to challenge it a little bit. If I challenge it too much, it's just going to blow up. And I want to find ways of just making it a little bit more difficult. And so there's my clumsy ways of describing what I mean by variability. If you take this all the way to its final end of this, we need this. If you look at the sports situation, we want physical health and well-being, and we want that. But if you look at the sports situation, they've got to do this technique under speed, fatigue, and pressure. And we're on our way now. We've started to play with these little neural blizzards. We begin to interfere with it. It's a long journey. Don't try and rush it because it'll go backwards. So let me stay on the variability again so you understand what this might look like. We're modifying the task. And the minute you bring it in, like we did with that young man, so now you've got to juggle. Well, we started with the ball, just throwing it up and down and catching it. And while you're still doing these jumping from side to side. And it interfered with it straight away. And so the keystone was less accurate. And you're going to see that. Or it's less consistent. Or it starts costing you more mechanically or metabolically. It's bloody hard work, this is. It was easy when I didn't have this to do. And suddenly it's made the load. You've altered the load a little bit. But you're in control of it. You can always back off from that. You haven't got to dive straight in and make it go silly. But get ready. This is what's going to happen in front of you as you start to poke the technical bear a little bit with some variability. I always let them know that this is going to happen. Hey, this is going to go down the toilet real quick. Get ready. It's not going to be as comfortable. It's going to be a bit more difficult. But let's not forget, we're going to build our perseverance. We're going to keep trying this, and we'll try it today. We'll try it in 10 more minutes. We'll try it tomorrow. We're going to keep trying it, and it will come good. So I've encouraged the perseverance, and I've let them know it's going to be difficult, rather than, I don't want to shock them. So I'll let them know we're going to go on a journey now. We're going to climb a mountain. You want to come with me? So it's not a coaching mistake. It's part of the learning process. It's you're trying to get more body systems to come into this keystone. You're trying to find more ways, and we're hardly scratching the surface in learning. The more we can get every part of this human being to get to this keystone, the better. I'm going to deepen the learning and the retention of this skill by burying it deeper and deeper, and it works. I don't just use opposition or external forces. There's all sorts of ways that we can do this, that we can manipulate that. And if I can go through a few now, it might sort of up the penny drops on that. What you're hoping for is that when you've gone and sorted, you poke the bear now with some variability that they've had to work even harder through or more accurately through, whatever it is, then if after they've done that for a good long period of time, they adapt to it and that their efficiency comes back and their accuracy comes back, their consistency comes back, it was worth poking it with a stick. But there is the opposite there. Look, make the mistake so you don't go there again. If they never recover from this, if you keep on going and it's still wrong, it's not effective, then and Stu McMillan mentioned this one, a great sprints coach, that you've just added this cost for no benefit. So you've got to keep an eye on this. It could be days or weeks or months, but if there's no adaptation, you've got to know when to come out and go down another variable. So again, I keep coming back to that same thing. You've got to keep watching. They will show you. Look, and they'll show you. So eventually, if you want to look now, what are these things that I can poke the bear with? We want to do things that help them go from general to related and things that go from related to competition specific. And we want them to do it relative to who they are and where they are now. It's no use doing what the under 18s are doing because they've been doing this for 7 years. These are new. You've got to make sure this fits into you. When you understood that one assumption of where are they now in this journey on training age, where are they now in their maturation, you really understand that. You will know whether this is too fast or too little. So it's got to be in the context of them, not the context of what chapter 12 said. So what are the things we can manipulate? Oh, you'll be sick of hearing these. We can use the static to dynamic to static to dynamic. We can do that. We can do it standing still. We can do it with a little bit of movement in it. We can play with that. lots of movement, hardly any movement. We've got that we can work on. We can go from slow to fast to slow to fast. When we can go into it and come out of it. So, in other words, we can manipulate the speed of the movement to poke the bear. Then we can go from simple to complex to simple to complex. I'll try to describe it in a minute. So if we're doing a squat, we can do squat and reach, squat and pivot, squat and rotate, squat with a narrow base, squat with a wide base, squat with while I'm pushing, squat while I'm pushing. I can add something to it. I can make it a more complex movement. I can kick and catch. I can kick and rotate. I can kick and fall under. I can stand up and kick. I can kneel down and then stand up. I can start adding all these things in by making it more complex. I can make it work it from just going in a straight line forward and backwards, like a restart, or laterally and backwards in a restart, or multi-directionally. I can manage the direction in all sorts of ways, and that'll poke the bear. So I can now I can alter the complexity of what we're doing by adding millions and millions and millions of things, and then I can go big to small to big to small. I can change the amplitude of what we're doing. I can do little short things. I can have wide positions. I can have narrow positions. I can have those. So I can manipulate the amplitude. I can then look at the one that everybody unfortunately sees as God's gift, and that's to start sticking an external resistance on it. Whoa, not yet. Not yet, please. You better earn the right to load it. So we can go from this resistance, we can manipulate that. And you'll see later on when I'll just drop you into throwing work in a minute. And then we can look at the unopposed and the opposed, bringing in the opposition to this situation, which puts the fear of God at lots of people. It puts the fear of God at every technique possible the minute you put opposition to it. So is it only one person they're opposed to? 2 people? 3 people? 5 on 5? How big's the area to make it easy? Is it narrow? You've got all these kind of things. So these become the very early, simple things that every coach should know what to do. Unfortunately, none of those are in any coach certification program. We've got to get ourselves together and share all this and show all the practical ways of doing this, because nobody speaks about it in any certification program. And then I can play with these other things. Look, I can do 2-handed and 1-handed, 2-footed and 1-footed. I can add games and relays. Games and relays are the one that I add in the most. Nothing better than getting, groups of 3 and having 2 at this end and 1 at that end and racing, doing this while you're juggling, while you're hopping, while you're skipping, while you're whatever. You get them competing like that, they love it. I can change the distances and the size of the areas, the distances we're working over. I can do one-on-one in a 3-meter square, and I can do one-on-one in a 10-meter square. And
so if we go back to that for a second, Calvin, sorry, then that whole idea of that picking out drills and dropping them in, compared to just changing the variables of the things that you're doing, whether that be area, speed, surface, opposition. That just gives you so much more time that you don't need to be spending thinking about, oh, well, I need to pull this out to impress the kids or to entertain the kids. I've got so much that I can just change within session that allows them to play about in that space. And I will say that I'm involved with the athletic skills model, and they do touch on this, and it's an amazing thing to see coming forward. But you're right, that you don't see enough of this, and that's why this framework, to me, the entry point for it is just a reminder for coaches that they don't need to be looking too far afield. That
No.
in their practice,
Yeah.
the things that they're already doing, just by changing some of these variables, the things that they're already doing,
Yeah.
game changer.
Absolutely. See, I don't know how many of I've listed here, but
Yeah.
the keystone hasn't changed.
No.
Imagine exposing the keystone that you've chosen, or the keystones that you've chosen, to these 967 varieties that you've got already, and I've
Yeah.
plenty more.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
that now, can you see how you understand? But See
Absolutely.
how deep and resonating the learning is, because they can do that keystone under all this variation.
Yeah.
That's not bad. And up on the screen at the moment is, surfaces, equipment, the way they carry things or grip it. Introducing the coach, introducing their mate, looking at them while they're doing it, and then saying, "Oh yeah, your heel was up. Then that was good." What? That's fantastic for the coach and for the athlete who's doing that. And then let's go off and do a movement break. I'll talk about movement breaks later on. But so yeah, add all those to it. Oh well, don't need any new drills.
No, no.
So again, when you go, how do we choose these? I mean, there's a list as long as you're around. Just go and start trying them and make them up. But one of the ones that it took me a long time, probably took to me until 30 years ago, really. Can I choose an activity where the keystone happens naturally? Wouldn't that be nice? Rather than me instruct it. So let me give you an example. I'll go back to that running one, and the keystone is toes up. We need toes up all the way through the gait cycle until that split second before. Then we have plantar flexion to hit the floor with. So it's toes up is an important one. So let's have a look. Can I do something for toes up? This wasn't my idea. I saw somebody doing this, and it was in Jamaica with the Jamaican sprint team and whatever. And I've got the little girl's doing it. That's an 8-year-old, and this is a decent athlete. Just by running and skipping with a skipping rope, the last thing you want to do is drop your toe down because your face
Yeah.
plant, and
It's a brilliant example.
the body knows that straight away. And it takes a while to teach them to skip. It takes a while to teach them to run and skip at the same time. Uh, but they learn very quickly this kind of stuff. And look at that. I haven't had to mention toes up because the activity makes them have toes up. My job after a while is just to say, do you realize you've got your toes up? Oh, I didn't. Okay, go and do it again and see if you can feel what your toes are doing. And then I link their minds to the activity. So here we've even got it into games. Look, here's some girls. And I'm looking for, remember, I've got two toes up and I've got heel to hamstring. And we got them in races here now. And away they go. So let's look at this girl right here who's leading. Let's see if we can see if her toes are up. Toes up. Well, I'm going to coach it. She's naturally doing it. They've been doing this a while now. We were doing this with it for a long time. But I can also look for the heel to hamstring situation. Well, I can look at the girl right at the front here. Her heel is not disappearing out the back. Her heel's driving to her hamstring, just by getting them to do that. And it just becomes a natural thing then. The other one that we do a lot of, I guess we've always seen that, is the mini hurdle running over hurdles, the little tiny ones. And that's what it looks like. Just by doing that, toes up. So that's a great little journey to go on as a coach and say, I wonder if I can find things where it's just going to happen naturally. I haven't got to do anything about it. Well, there's plenty of those which allows you to shut up and not keeping on instructing, and it allows them to explore it. So there's some things there. The minute you put a skipping rope in it, it's a bit of a neural blizzard to go through, but toes up. I've put this down. This is the way I do lots of my sessions with the under 14s. I go through a cycle. This is to do with running activities. A warm up. I've got general running activities, event specific activities for the track sprinter. Then I've got to make sure I'm doing my physical development. Then I'm going to try and apply it. But then I rotate it again. Now you're thinking, if I'm out there for 60 minutes, I'm getting about 6 minutes on each one of these. And I learned this a long time ago. They got the attention span of a gnat. If I keep doing the same thing for long periods of time, so I move through these sectors like this, 6 or 8 minutes at each one. So there's something, a new challenge, a new challenge. They never get bored. A Keystone's running through all that. The Keystone is running through all this. But they've got variety of these things going on. Now, my job is to populate these areas. So again, let me try and populate it with lists of those things that can act as variability in running. So inside the warm-up and the general running, I can run forwards, I can run backwards, I can go lateral, I can have high knees, low knees, I can go straight, I can go in a circle, I can go clockwise and anti-clockwise, I can face into the circle, out of the circle, I can have no hands being worked, I can have one hand being in, I can have a broomstick carried overhead, I can carry something, I can be passing something between my hands. I've got all that on the general running stuff. There's every one of those is a poke in the bear. I can use the same thing for skipping and bounding or leaping or stepping. I've got all these same things going on here. I can change the height. You skip for height or you skip for distance. You can do it where the feet don't cross. You can do it in clocks. So all that list there, keep adding them up of the kind of pressure you can put on this keystone. And then there's galloping. Oh, the kids will go and they love doing galloping stuff when they're pretending they're on a horse. And you can, again, the keystone can be driven into all these. Now, it's a track and field meet, so it's a track and field session. So we want to get them closer to looking at event specific. So now while I'm doing it, these are all the stock standard ones that every sprint coach on the planet is doing. They're no different anywhere else. They're all doing this stuff. And these are good movement because these are ways of getting the movement pattern ingrained and to get the techniques involved in terms of the keystones. And everybody will, oh, you got the two socks down there. Sprint coaches will recognize those and you can go and look and you'll see them everywhere. So now in the event specific 6 or 7 minutes, we can start doing some of that. Then I've got my physical work. I've got to teach them to squat, lunge, pull, push, brace, rotate, hinge, and landing. I can play with every direction, plane, speed, amplitude, force, and saturate. So I've now got a section here where we might be, I don't know whether we're pulling or pushing, whatever you're doing. You've got a section in there which is not to, and then I'm going to apply it. We've got games and relays of all those things to do with the keystones or with the pushing and the pulling or whatever you're going to do. We'll put them into some relays and have a hell of a lot of fun doing that. And then take a breather, and we go through the whole sequence again before we do the warm down. That I found with the younger age group stops them from getting bored witless because they're always, but the thing that don't change, the keystone runs all the way through that. They don't know it. They're just experiencing all sorts of things. So that each person has got their own way of putting a session together on the top here. And how you populate it, that's the way I populate it to have variability on the keystones. So I can, whatever the task is, I can manipulate it. I mean, maybe some of these might just help a little bit of the more examples you've got. So here's an amplitude of a running drill, right? Amplitude, this is a huge thing. Nobody runs like that, but we've made it big. Now you can then do that big part there. And then you can speed that big part up. And then you can break into the run and see if you can still do it. So we've got that we working the keystone. She's working on toes up, heel to hamstring, step over the opposite knee, and in a little C shape. I won't bore you with that because it's my own terminology. This is the 13-year-old. She's 13 at the time, learning to be a sprinter. So we use amplitude, and then we took amplitude on that same keystone of heel to hamstring. This was a heel to hamstring day, heel to hamstring, and we put it into those different things there. Keystone stayed the same, but with a neural blizzard hit. So again, we're going to manipulate the task. So we'll just start. Right, you got to forgive me on this one. This is going to aid me. 1971, Hartford, Kentucky. When I was teaching, after I'd done work at Western Kentucky and I taught there in the graduate program, I stayed on and I became a PE teacher at a primary school. And that was our gym, which is the lunchroom. And this was a bunch of kids that or the girls used to go out and pick flowers, and the boys would play basketball or football. They had no, and we didn't do that. I don't know whether you know. I got no money. I'd got a record player with Sugar Sugar and the Archies on it, and another one. So we'd play music, and I went and bought a big long roll of rope, and I gave them all a skipping rope each. Now this, all they had to do here was cross the rope in as many different ways as you can. And this was the kids, and I've never seen so much fun in all my life. And look at their creativity. There's a girl in here who's got palsy, and she tried her ass off. Look, I did everything possible. Then we'd stop them and we'd demonstrate. And then each would have a demonstration. They all want you to do it, showing me different ways of doing it. Look at, they just made all this up. Then we returned to the challenge of crossing that, and they came up with even better ideas. Look at all the different directions they're moving in. So that you don't need specialist equipment. You just got to let them go. And some of the stuff these kids were doing were beyond belief. I got more video of this where we put music on, and you will be. It was unbelievable. So this is another way of the variabilities coming in to this situation. You can, if you want to sort of focus in a little bit, we got toes up, heel to hamstring, going into the lunge position. Well, you can do this. This is dead simple. Controlled. Then we can we can poke the bear with holding that ball up there. And then we can make the step go to the side. We can then try and do them one after the other. See, it's only a small variation that you do that kicks the brain. We can go right to this kind of stuff. Where if you want to satisfy all the weightlifters out there, then we got this one where we're changing the different angles of doing it. Then here's one of the standard sprint drills, heel to hamstring, and here's little Ella with taking the arms out of it. Here's Michael. Now he's got to think about lunging and pushing, but can he go heel to hamstring first, and then he go? So we've interfered with it, but the keystone is still there. So one of Franz's jobs. This is an elite athlete going over. So all the same keystones are going on. Toes up, heel to hamstring. Power, you want to do it when you're going to do this? Yeah, we can apply it. If you want to go right to the very end stages, and there's that original one as well of using amplitude. So the keystone can be, you can aim all sorts of things at it. Just skipping up, just skipping. You want to you better get your toes up when you're doing this one. That's my 11-year-old. That's my 11-year-old granddaughter doing that. So, I'm hoping that's. Tell me when to stop. But in the throwing area, whether that's to do with athletics throwing, or it's to do with the cricket throwing, or volleyball, or any overhead athlete at all, we've got all these. We can change the environment by throwing a wall with a partner. We can change the distance. We can change the height. We can change the body position. We can throw when we're seated, when we're kneeling with our hips high, split stance. Look at all this. We can throw after squatting, throw after lunging. Blimey, action. We can push it forward, push it sideways, rotate. We can sling it. We can throw it from overhead. Two-handed, one-handed. Then we can change all the equipment. Quoits, sandbags, sand socks, shot disc. So
it goes on and it goes on.
It just, yeah. So my keystones aren't changing, but I'm gonna put some pressure on it in some way, shape, or form. Now, with what we're looking at, 15 years of work.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen overnight. But look at the tool. Have you noticed how this toolbox is growing now? So what I've just said is that this is the final bit, basically, because we've done free explanation, demonstration, free practice, and go out and do it. It was a very simple version of what we want you to do. Whatever that keystone is, you choose the simplest version, and away you go. And you let them all succeed at it. And then you fetch them back in again, different demonstration. You've observed some responses of where it hasn't been quite going right, and you tighten those up as an instruction in there just to be aware of it, and they go back out and free practice again. And then you begin to, this is could be days, months, weeks later, we explain and we demonstrate again, and we use analogies. Cross the bar like a frog. External focus. Look over the trees. The outcome, have your fingers finishing up pointing to there. Again, free practice. And they still stay pretty close. Then we poke it with a stick. And we add a wrinkle to it. Whoa, don't like that. Well, we're going to keep trying it. We're going to test the perseverance. And if it just falls flat on its face, we go back again to the stage before it. It was of no use just putting one slide up like this without going on that entire journey of trying to get every one of the coaches who might see this to build their checklist of all the assumptions, all the keystones, and all the different ways that you can poke the bear. The context had to be put together to start with until we finished up here.
Kelvin,
Did any of that make sense?
it was incredible. Obviously, I've come at it and just seeing the potential of it, which is why I've written about it. I wanted to speak to you about it, and I think to wrap up. I mean, firstly, we could both go on for a long time. I think we both know that. But let's wrap it up here. Let's say, first of all, thank you very much for sharing this.
That's all right. A pleasure.
Is an absolute gold mine of work to be done there. And I think before we go, it's just to really to kind of wrap it up from my perspective. In there, you've got talking about assumptions, talking about study groups, and talking about how you show up as a coach. And I mentioned that at the very start. Get it written down. Writing a manifesto, writing a coaching philosophy is a wonderful way to bring your ideas into the world and then to put them in front of people like Calvin and other generous practitioners, of which there are many, to begin to talk about challenging your assumptions. And to really, if there's a thread through this, it's the show us what you can do. Show us what you can do. And so it's been an absolute pleasure. I'm going to close by saying that Good Coach, Bad Coach, the book that I've just written, which has Calvin's framework in there, is available to you all now. Thank you very much, Calvin, for your time. And
Pleasure, mate. Great.
and if there's any questions, I will share contact details and details of where you can find us and where you can find the information. But for now, thank you very much.